Welcome back to This Week in Indies. Once upon a time in a far-off land, it was deemed a mistake that once you set your foot somewhere, as an author, you can no longer pivot to another genre. The fear being that you're losing a built-in audience. The truth is, though, so many have done it for so long. So what is the key to that success? What makes this transition smoother? And how can we benefit from being a multi-genre author? We will discuss this and more. Then, Seal Cannon will be along with indie books you might enjoy if you're a fan of One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. Then we do a Go Indie Now Minute, an epilogue with a multiple choice game, and then we blend into the crowd for This Week in Indies with your host, Joe Compton. Hello, everybody. Welcome to This Week in Indies. I am your host, Joe Compton. I apologize for my voice. I'm just trying to get past this awful sinus sickness that I've been going through for the last couple of weeks. So I really do appreciate you sticking with us. I apologize for the raspiness. But that being said, welcome. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. We really appreciate you being here. We have a great show for you, great panel that's going to discuss multiple genres, and I'm looking forward to that. Unfortunately, however, I do have to start the show saying goodbye to an indie who I think is important in our community, somebody who I think pioneered a lot for the horror genre, and unfortunately, she passed away earlier this week, and that's Nancy Kilpatrick. She was a award-winning writer and editor, published 23 novels, 2 novellas, 1 nonfiction book, and over 250 short stories, and 9 collections of her short fiction. Plus, she also did comic books, graphic novels, and edited 15 anthologies. She co-wrote a play and has penned a lot of articles and reviews about writing. Her work has been translated into 8 languages. She wrote in multiple genres, so it's fitting that we're saying goodbye to her here. She wrote dark fantasy, horror, mystery, erotic horror, and science fiction. But she most notably was noted for horror because she was a 4-time Bram Stoker Award finalist, a 7-time Aurora Award finalist, and a 2-time Paris Book Festival winner for the anthologies, and the Forward Reviewers Award Silver winner for collections, the winner of the Murder, Mayhem, and Macabre Award, and Standing Stone Short Fiction winner and Inner Zone winner. Her accolades are endless. Her series Thrones of Blood has been optioned for film and TV, and hopefully that comes to fruition. Her previous effort, Near Death, had been optioned a couple times for opportunity to be on film or television, and just never came to light. And that happens in this business. I happened to meet Nancy once upon a time when I used to go to When Words Collide in Calgary. I actually was sitting at a table with her, just casually having conversation, and it was very apparent right away how amazingly astute she was, and how just she was very nice. She was very warm. She was very a person that you can talk a lot about fiction with, and as is anybody in this community, you meet a lot of great people when you meet them face to face, and she was somebody that I actually had planned on interviewing at When Words Collide the next year. However, she didn't make it for whatever reason, and that never happened, and I'm sad about that. Then we just never connected after that. But she is somebody that the community is going to miss tremendously. She was a very big part of the Canadian community, and especially in the horror genre. So we we honor her and thank her for all that she's contributed to our world. And rest in peace, Nancy. And we'll take a moment of silence and then start our show. All right. Well, let's get it to the right screen here. Come on. Why did it do that? That's weird. Okay. There we go. Now I've got to move everybody again. All right. Welcome, everybody. We're here. This is the panel. Look at this lovely, lovely group of people. I'm super excited to have you all here. Thank you so much for being here. Let's just go down the list real quick and say hello. Tell everybody a little bit about yourselves. So, Lily, start us off, please.
Hi, everyone. I am Lily Lucchesi. I am a USA Today bestselling author of urban fantasy and subgenres within it. I am also the editor and co founder at Partners in Crime Book Services, and I write romance as Samantha Calcott and S.L. Sinclair.
And Juliet.
Hey everyone, I'm Juliet Rose. I'm a little crackly too today, Joe, so you're not alone on that. I am an author of 12 books. I'm also an editor and a publisher and an award winning. I just won another award yesterday. So
Oh, awesome. Congratulations. All right, James.
Hi, I'm James Hill. I also write underneath the name of J.L. Hill because I'm not very imaginative. And I'm also a publisher. And I've been runner-up on several awards. Haven't won anything yet, but that's okay. I just keep writing. Not worried about awards.
Nice. Well, I mean, at least you're thought of. That's pretty nice.
That's nice. Yes.
All right, and Anita.
Hi, I'm Anita Stewart. I write under A.F. Stewart, multiple genres of fantasy, horror, steampunk, poetry, and soon to be paranormal cozy mystery. So
Nice. All right. So, and now we've got some people in the audience. Sean is here. Hello, Sean. A.L. Mengel's here, and thank you, A.L., for your thoughts there. Yeah, she's incredible. I mean, her accolades just span decades, and it's just amazing. And she was a really really prolific author, so she's going to be missed for sure. All right, so multiple genres. I wanted to start the conversation by talking about when you decided to cross that line, when you decided that, you know what, I'm going to be a multiple genre author. What is the thing you thought about the most? What was the thing that you were most, tiptoeing around? What did you have? What had the most intrepidation for you in terms of that classification? Because I have to think you had to think about that a little bit, and or maybe you didn't. I don't know, but I'm curious if anybody, what was the first thing you thought about when you were about to cross that line?
I actually didn't think about it until recently. Like when I was writing, it's like I was writing fantasy, and then I wrote a horror story by accident. And then I like that. Let's write horror too. And then, well, I've always written poetry, so that was there. And so and all the multi genres I was writing up to that point were basically dark. So that was their combining characteristic. But the paranormal cozy mystery, which I still maintain my muse was drunk when she made me write that. That one was very different from writing horror, writing dark fantasy, writing even poetry, because a lot of my poetry is dark too. Because you can't kill off villages, and you can't do massacres, and you can't do a lot of things that I usually do in my books. So that was, and a mystery is crafted far different than a horror story or thing. So that one was I had to really think about that. How am I going to market it? How am I going to sell it to my readers who want the dark stuff? So that one's been a lot of braining on that with it. And I was really hesitant to do it.
Well, as Lily Lucchesi, I actually already write multiple genres, even without the pen names. But everything is centered in the same world. The Paranormal Detective series, which is Stakeout, the Page Papillon Paranormal Cozy Mysteries, which is up there, that's in the same world, as is my YA Coven series. It all ties together with an urban fantasy horror background. Even though, the YA and the cozies have no actual horror elements, it still ties them together. But I launched my first pen name, Samantha Calcott, in 2018. That was frightening. That was very frightening for me because there was a lot of stigma in the urban fantasy world if you went and wrote romance. You were selling out. It's still a stigma now, but I had the same worry again launching SL Sinclair in 2021. I didn't even claim the pen name as mine until late 2023 because it's very, very dark romance. It's very risque. It's very taboo. A lot of people don't like it. A lot of people report the books when they see them. And so my desire to write it and the characters in my head, those were the reasons that I'm just like, screw it. I need to make this pen name. I need to create these books because the characters want to be here. I maintain that I don't make these decisions. They do.
I also write very dark in all of my forms of writing, but I decided to go with J.L. Hill when I started writing the crime fiction because it's not only dark, but it's also very sexualized and very adult themed. And I didn't want people who read my science fiction and my fantasies to then pick up something that was completely over the line when it came to crime stories. And I really can't write crime stories that don't really hit that element of violence and sexuality that is really part of the crime world. So that's why I said I didn't have much imagination in picking a pen name because I wanted people to know it was me writing all these different stories. I just wanted them to know if they seen J.L. Hill and they were used to something a little bit lighter, don't pick that book up because it's going to be very heavy. And people have told me I can't read those novels at night and things like that. But when you come to sci-fi, fantasy, and now I'm working on on a horror novel. I keep writing in different genres because it keeps my writing fresh. And the most thing that happen when you write in different genres, you have to think differently.
Yeah, I planned nothing, so unfortunately, I'm kind of like Anita. I didn't really think about any of it. When I never intended to write crush genre, like that wasn't something I thought about. I just wanted to write whatever story popped in my head. And I'm a big film buff, and directors aren't asked that same question, and it drives me crazy a little bit. Like because Steven Spielberg can do a movie about World War II or a movie about aliens, and no one's like, hey, why did you do that, or why don't you use a different name? And I feel like that's something I like to erase a little bit. I respect what you're saying, James, though, about letting people know in a way that, okay, this is maybe a little darker, but it's not, it's almost like a version of your name versus like a pen name in that way, because you're saying, okay, these are my stories that are a little darker. So I'm J.L. Hill, or maybe the other way, I don't remember. But it's James. So it's easy for, I think, your readers to follow you knowing you're the same person, but knowing that maybe that's not their deal, right? I'm Juliet Rose across the board, whatever I write. And I've been asked if I would use a pen name. And for me, it is hard enough for me to keep track of myself. I'll say that. To just follow up on my own website and those type of things. So yeah, I stuck with it. And I assume that if someone's following me, they like my voice in general.
Yeah, that's the whole idea, right? I think that is what has bridged the gap between um, the taboo of it before the multi-genre, back in the day, losing your audience. But the audience is going to follow you because your voice, and I think your voice comes through no matter how you write. I think even in the dark, if you're going from dark to light, or romance to erotica, it's your voice is going to be there, and I think people will recognize that and gravitate towards that. I think that's important. I wonder, is I mean, Juliet says she doesn't plan anything, and we've had this conversation before about that. But I wonder, is there is there a different? And James, you actually touched on this a little bit too. Is there a different approach to the different genres for you? Do you feel like you tackle something a little differently, whether it be after you write it, in the edit? Do you feel like once you've established a genre, you're looking at it as the genre, or do you still just look at it as your story and you tackle it just plainly as the story, and whatever genre it gets pigeonholed in, that's what happens?
For me, the story decides the genre. So when I come up with a story, it automatically fits into one of the genres that I work in, or it creates a new one. Now, the only thing is, I have been trying to write a horror story or come up with a horror length novel for a very long time. Stephen King has been one of my favorite authors, and I always loved Edgar Allan Poe, and so those are two of my biggest influences. And I always wanted to write a horror story, and the stories that I've been coming up with just did not fit that category. And so when I come up with a story and I come up, oh, that's a good idea for a story, and I start working it out, fleshing it out, it automatically gears itself to one genre or another. This is more science fiction, and will lend itself more to a science fiction role, or this is more of a fantasy. I can see this in a fantasy world, or this is more of an adult novel, adult crime, or so the story themselves kind of steer me to where they need to be. And like I said, that's what keeps the idea fresh, because when the idea comes into mind, I don't say, oh, I'm going to write another science fiction story. uh, if it's a science fiction story, it will be a science fiction story. And and, and it comes in with that feel to it, and with that idea to it, and therefore I then write a science fiction story.
You know what? You invoked him, so I have to.
It
Yeah,
wasn't me
why
this
me?
time. It wasn't me this time. Yeah, James, same. I always set out to write horror. Stakeout was supposed to be a horror novel. It ended like a horror novel. And then the characters, Angelica in particular, decided to tell me, no, this is not the story I want to tell. There's more here. And you also made a villain come back to life. So there's really more here. So I cut 20,000 words. I changed the ending. By changing the ending and having to tweak other things, it became urban fantasy with horror elements. So every time I try to write something horror that happens, I think the closest I've gotten was Never Again, which is also in the same world. Like I said, the Lily Lucchesi books, I know it's going to be a Lily book if it's in that world. If it's not in that world, it's likely going to fall as a romance. But if it doesn't fall under either, I just kind of shelve it for now because I don't have the bandwidth to handle anymore. But yeah, the main thing that I do is the characters come to me with their story, and immediately now, as I've grown, because Stakeout was my first book, that was 10 years ago. So as I've grown as an author, my characters tell me what their genre is right away. So I know what pen name to put it under and how to treat it, not only during the writing, but especially during the edits, my self edits and setting up my promotions, all of that. It's a very streamlined process now, whereas when I just started, it was like it was very I wasn't sure what I was doing because my brain was everywhere. Now my brain is neatly compartmentalized.
Yeah, I'm more genre focused, I think. I mean, the story is definitely the main thing, but I always know going into whatever story I'm writing what genre it is. And so I have to adjust the mindset to whatever genre I'm writing. Like with when I'm writing the steampunk, especially, I have to turn off the historical brain because while you have to be historically accurate, um, for whatever story you're writing, you have to put in things that are not historically accurate, like ornithopters and big weird guns and mechanicals and automatons and things. So I have to turn off at least part of my historical brain when I write steampunk. But and with the fantasy, I'm always thinking of what fantasy elements am I going to add into the book that are thing like with the Arthurian series. I definitely it was all Arthurian legend, Celtic myth, all that sort of thing, and the focus I was there. So it varies by story of what I'm doing. And with horror, well, it's always atmosphere, setting, creepiness, ghosts, whatever I'm putting in the horror story, that's where I am. So I'm definitely more focused on genre as more of a atmosphere and setting, as opposed to like this has to be here and this has to be here and this has to be here because it's part of the tropes, right? But I definitely feed into the genre as I write, like with the historical fantasy too. It's like that was very much about history, but history with carnivorous mermaids. So, things like that.
I like that. Carnivorous mermaids. My my the Emerald Lady is about mermaids and it's historical. When I write fantasy, they tend to be more historical because I can use history as a good backdrop to weave in the fantastical stuff and the fantasy and create characters that people already think of. Dragons, mermaids, things like that, wizards, whatever. That's already there in the history, in our history. So it
Yeah.
makes it easier to weave that stuff into a fantasy than it would be into a crime story or sci-fi. Because when you get to sci-fi, you're moving away from the fantasy. Even though you're creating fantastical worlds, you're trying to base them on some sort of hardcore factual uh, uh, envelope. You're trying to fit that thing that you would think is impossible, like traveling faster than the speed of light. Everybody keeps saying it's impossible, and so far we know it is. But time travel, another thing, people think of that as being an impossibility, but we create this envelope around it and say, well, if we could only do this, then that would be possible, and you make that envelope that the world fits into. And so, but you don't have any history on that. We have no history of time travel. We have no history of flying faster. But in that case, we also had no history of breaking the sound barrier until we did it. So, do you take that kind of approach when you write sci-fi? It's a little different than fantasy because in fantasy, you have the ideas already there and the belief already there that these things are possible or perhaps have happened and we just don't know about them. Whereas in science fiction, you're building that world out from what we know to what we will say is possible.
Yeah, and I was actually looking at Sean's comment on blending genres in the chat, and that's I think that's the thing too, because you were asking Joe initially, like how do we kind of approach a genre, if we're going to do a different genre, and I think for me, I don't say I'm really multi-genre. I say I'm mixed genre because I really in each book I'm going to have multiple genres usually kind of mixed in there. So again, I go in with a story idea in mind first, just see where it goes. And I've had the same thing where I started out thinking, okay, this is going to be a horror. And maybe it did have horror elements, but then it may be like my book, Caring Good, it weaved into more of a metaphysical fiction, which is like its own thing, visionary fiction with horror elements. So I kind of just roll with it. But I'll honestly say I don't really define the genre until I'm done. And then I'll usually have somebody read it and say, what genre do you think this is? Because you have to, for awards, you have to put it into certain categories. But I don't always know what those categories are, even when I'm done.
Sure. A.L. Mango says I write supernatural thrillers and also science fiction all under the same name. Others have suggested I write something in erotica. If I was to do that, I would still keep my name.
Right, and that's a choice. A lot of people, they look at it as, oh, you're hiding it, or maybe you're not good enough, or how the beginning of this started, it was a bad thing to do. For many of us who write vastly different genres, it is for marketing purposes. A lot of us want to market it to the right readers, and it's going to confuse people if they're going to the Lily Lucchesi page after having read the Paranormal Detective series, and then they were to find, let's say, Publish the Family Firm as Lily. They would be very surprised. It's not cohesive. It's not a good buyer experience. So for a lot of us who do it, we separate it for sales reasons, for marketing reasons, for ad reasons. It's not a bad thing. It's not something I say, oh, don't do that. Because a lot of people tell me my YA should have its own pen name. No,
and
it fits in my world.
I don't know if I'm spoiling something for everybody here, Lily, but just so you're aware too, for Lily, it's a gimmick thing too, because her urban fantasies all and her paranormal cozy also all connect to the same world.
Yes.
So I could totally see why you would go with a different name for the cozy
Right.
for the
For the
nice for
romance.
the casual romance and for the erotica, because then that would be, I think that would be an example of, that's a good way to utilize a pen name, because I would be confused if all of a sudden you have this wonderful little nice romance in uh, Davenport, Iowa, where they're having tea, and a witch all of a sudden shows up, right? And
Right.
it's like, I mean, that happens. That would happen in an A.F. Stewart story pretty easily.
Actually, it
But
has.
Right.
but
And my other pen
but you're
names are going
connecting the
into.
world, so that's a gimmick that I think really needs to be
Yeah.
said. That's why
And I
pen names
like
are
creating
important.
worlds. Like James said, I love Stephen King. I love that everything he writes is in his world. So my other two pen
Yeah,
names, I'm slowly rebranding the Samantha Calcott. She is now getting her Winter Creek world, and that is going to be her whole world. So the books that were not Winter Creek, I'm moving over to S.L. Sinclair and putting them in her world. So all three pen names are three separate worlds. And again,
yeah.
it's not just for marketing purposes. It is because that is what the characters wanted. They all wanted to be connected. So I just do what they tell me.
Other than my sci-fi, which as a sci-fi writer, I am hardcore. Keep fantasies and other things out of your sci-fi writing.
Yeah.
Other than that, I don't mind blending uh, historical or blending different elements of, because I think all writing really get blended somewhat. You have romance, you have a little horror, something horrible happens. Like I say in my crime novel, horrible thing happened to horrible people. That's
Yeah.
what I consider a crime novel.
I want to get into the blending stuff, but let me get through some of this comments,
All
because I
right.
think the blending thing is really interesting. But A.O. Michael says, I love Poe as well. He influenced some of my work. I love Sagan, who influences my sci-fi. And we already did that comment. And then Sean said, I like to have some verisimilitude in my sci-fi, but speculating on what is possible. In my sci-fi, readers need to throw out the laws of physics, very supernatural in nature. I I think there's something to be said for the blending aspect of it, and I think there's a natural cause and effect with blending, right? I mean, there's a I think what we've discovered as writers and as readers, that we're getting too smart for our own good in a lot of respects. Things that used to be like, as a kid reading, that used to fool us, don't fool us anymore. We figure out the plot within the first 5 pages, and so in order to do that, we have to be a little bit more versatile. And I think where that has come into play is the villain. The villain has become a more of an anti-hero than a villain in a lot of respects, or has become a complex character that we have to give complexity to. And I think genre is the same thing, right? I think you can't just write a straight up you could write a straight up sci-fi, but it's going to have some kind of tad, even if it's a tad bit of it, it's going to have something, a nuance, because that is what's going to make you smarter uh, to the reader. That's what's going to attract the reader, right? I think there's something to be said for that. I don't know if you agree with all that, but
I do agree with it. My S.L. Sinclair books, I have some very, again, dark elements in there, but they're not just dark romance elements. They're just dark. I mean, there are stalkers. Sometimes the stalker winds up being the love interest, but sometimes the stalker winds up being and deals with crime. The family firm deals with a lot of crime. I deal with religious trauma, which I know is also something that happens quite often. A lot of horror that I love to read. So I think a natural blending is very normal, because in life, nothing is just one thing. And if something is just a straightforward plot with no subplot, no nuance, it feels a little flat. It falls a little flat. It doesn't keep us going. Like, we want our main character in a horror, we want them to have something to work for. So maybe they have a romance, maybe they have a child that they have to work for, or they have to find a beloved pet. Something that blends in, either something maybe literary in
that's the
nature,
perfect that's the perfect
family.
word. Flat is the perfect word. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think character is a good place to blend stuff in. Uh, your plots and your storyline, you may not be able to. It depends on your writing, but a lot of times, like I said, I try to keep my sci-fi, scientific, and in that kind of a world. But then I can blend in other elements in the characters because, like you say, if you don't give them emotional growth, if you don't blend in the feelings and the reality of how they deal with their world, then everything falls flat on its face, and the story becomes very boring to read. So it's just like you're reading a grocery list or you're reading someone trip to the store, you know.
Yeah.
So you have to bring in the emotional. You have to have them react to their world, and no matter what genre you're in, and then that's a good place to start blending different elements in because, like I said, nothing's really straightforward one. Even though I try to keep my sci-fi straightforward sci-fi, they blend in other ideas, romances, you know, crime, fantasy. Because even a scientist is fantasizing about something that is not yet possible. So he has an idea of a future that doesn't exist, and he's trying to make it exist, or he's trying to will it into existence, type of thing. So you have all these type of things, but for me, they come in through the characters, and that's what really makes the stories come alive because
Yes.
you get involved in this person's life. And when people tell me that they got so involved in this character's life, and then I killed them off, and they hate me for it, I'm like, yes, great. I'm glad you hate me for that because that meant the character meant something to you, and it means something to me. When someone dies in my story, it really hurts me that I had to kill them, but they need to go.
Yeah, and even the subgenres these days are a blend of genres because you've got
Yeah.
romantasy, historic fantasy. I mean, you've got even some sci-fi like time travel sci-fi. That's a blend of genres, really. So I mean, and you've got like dinosaur time travel. So it's like but there's several people out there that that time travel back to dinosaurs. So you have a Jurassic Park, a literal Jurassic Park in time travel. So I mean, and like with my Hayward and Anderson, that blends steampunk, mystery, and horror. Um, and so I mean, that's just a mashup. I have no idea how to market, but people like it. So it's like, but that one mainly rides on its main characters, Lars and Elspeth, because people connect with those two characters because they're poor Lars is just sort of dragged along by her craziness, and people like that. So it's like as long as you can hook them with the characters, it really doesn't matter too much how you blend the genres, as long as you do it well.
I think you're all right on. I think subgenres is a big blamer for all this, but how about for you, Juliet? What do you think about that? What do you think about blending and being natural?
Yeah, I think I kind of answered that when I was saying that before. But one of the things I was thinking about is like when I grew up and I was reading books, I didn't feel like there was such like this definition of genres. Like you'd get a book and it was maybe there was like romance and you had certain things, but like I feel like kind of talking about the subgenres, we've gotten to the point where everything has to be such a specific genre. Where when I was growing up, I felt like I would just pick a book off the shelf and I'd read it. And even Stephen King, like people say he's a horror author, but he's not just a horror author. He writes fantasy. He writes, he goes all over the place. He writes true crime. And so like, ultimately, I feel like we blend because that's a good story. We're telling a story first. The genre is just to me, it's somewhat of a marketing tool because that's how the reader knows kind of what they're looking for.
Right.
Versus, like I don't really think about it when I'm writing, even now I'm theoretically writing a horror book, but we'll see, I don't really know. I'm just writing a good story.
Yeah, I agree with that. Genre, tropes, all of that, plot even, that's a marketing tool. The characters drive the stories.
Yeah,
They
for
drive
sure.
everything.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, you look at probably the master genre, multi-genre, if you want to call him an author, Shakespeare. I mean, and everything's character driven with Shakespeare. I mean, how the characters react to what is going on determines if it's going to be comedy or tragedy, or if it's going to be, he has war stories, he has fantasy stories. I mean, there's the you can go back. Poe is a great example of. Also, he wrote detective. He's for a lot of people, he is the inventor of the cozy in a lot of respects, right? So, uh, because he wanted to write something different from that was dark, but didn't have that had your imagination behind the darkness instead of the darkness being forefront, right? And so, I think there's it goes back a long, long way, and we just never defined it because we just thought they were geniuses and brilliant. So we just let that happen.
One
Right?
of Poe's stories that I never hear talked about is one of the ones that shaped how I write, and that was Conversations with a Mummy, where you're sitting
Great
there
story.
and there's, excavators for a museum, and the mummy just sits up and starts talking and has these conversations, and it's an immediate suspension of disbelief.
Yeah,
You as the reader are not saying that, like, well, that's not possible. It was in that time that would be considered urban fantasy, but urban fantasy was not a genre.
yeah.
But that is one of the things that really shaped me as a writer because of how he was able to suspend your disbelief immediately. It's like, yeah, absolutely. That girl's cat just got up and turned into a human and talked. Awesome. That's how I take how I reacted to that story and put that to my own books and how I want readers to react to my books.
Bloodflowers and Sickness says, I totally understand when Lily says that is what the characters want. I had this happen in a screenplay that I wrote. And Sean asked James a question, and James answered it in the chat. But he said, do you write space opera? How do you feel about the cross genres? And James said, Sean, I have not yet, but it's coming as I write the prequel to Pegasus. Yeah, that's awesome. And then Amego says, what about not only genre, but multiple mediums? I took a book idea and turned it into a vlog on a series on YouTube. Joe, I was inspired for this based on your art next to you. So, yeah, inspired for asking this question, rather. Yeah, okay. And Sean said, awesome. All right. But, yeah, what about multiple mediums? Is that is that something that you're all thinking about crossing at some point? Is there another medium you'd like to take a story to that you have thought about or attempted? Via what we're talking about, right? Whether it be a screenplay, graphic novel, whatever you might think about. Are there stories that you intentionally write for that purpose, or a story that you've written that you would like to turn that into a different medium? Is that something that you all think about as well?
I'm trying to get my nephew to turn the Killer series into a graphic novel. I think it would really fit well. He did the logo for my publishing company, and he's
Cool.
really a good artist. And if I can ever prod him hard enough, I've been trying to for several years now. He had gotten into an artist funk, and so I've been trying to prod him into working with me on a graphic novel for the Killer series. I gave him the first book and thought, all right, read this and come up with some scenes. Come up with some scenes, and then we'll work on it. And
Nice.
yeah, so that's one idea. Most authors think about movies,
Right.
but the world has opened up into so many different avenues now. Of course, we have audio books, which is somewhat the same as a written book. It's just someone else reading it for you. But with the world as it is, the way it has opened up, there's a whole lot more out there, like the video logs and things like that. That as a publisher, it becomes so much more difficult to market all of these things and so expensive to market, because when my authors tell me, hey, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? I'm like, yeah, that's a good idea. But, we still have the same problem of selling it. So, audiobooks and video logs is great and all that kind of stuff, but you still have the same problem of trying to sell it. And that's where some of the drawback comes in. I would love to, be in the movies and be here and there, but then it's like you're marketing. You're spending so much time marketing that it's a killer.
Yeah, Stakeout, after it was released, I'm gonna say about 9 months after, maybe a little more, a little less, was actually I was speaking to producers at CBS. They wanted it. They wanted to develop a TV show, just one season on the first book. And unfortunately, they had, if anyone remembers when Supergirl got canceled and a lot of their shows moved over to the CW, they had a whole restructuring where a lot of staff got laid off. And fortunately, that producer that was acquiring Stakeout was one of the casualties. So that never happened. So now I never thought of it for TV, but now I'm a little bitter and I want it on TV just because CBS fell through on me. But I always wanted to see it as a video game. I want it like an Assassin's Creed style.
Cool.
And my Coven series, I want to see it as an anime one day. But like for audiobooks, they are expensive to produce. I am actually recording my own because I've had multiple people tell me I could. So I'm going to start slowly getting those out as I record them. It's going to be, months and months, but a book at a time. Audiobooks are easier to market than most anything else. And those are very feasible for indie authors. There's a lot of new services that have come around with real humans that you pay that make things easier for indie authors. There are softwares where if you want to record them yourself, you can edit out your little bleeps and, issues without having to re-record. So there's a lot of great avenues for audio right now. But like the far-fetched dream is, a TV show for Stakeout and then a video game. I want a first-person player video game.
Thank you for making that broad distinction too, because yes, we want the artist to be the voice, not some computer.
There is one idea I have for a book that I would love to make into a graphic novel. Cost right now is not feasible for that because I'd have to find an artist and all that sort of thing. But I mean, I think it would make a great graphic novel, my idea. But also, I'd love to see fantasy come true. Past Legends and the Camelot Immortal series into a TV show, I think would make a great TV show. But
nice. Juliet, how about for you?
Yeah, I don't think I think too much on it just because I'm always driving towards the next book. I mean, I think everybody, like James said, like to a degree, we always think about movies or TV shows. And I think that's, something that even when we're writing, maybe we're kind of, at least for me, when I'm writing, I'm literally seeing it as a movie as I'm writing it. So it naturally kind of seems to flow that direction. I love Lily's idea of the video game. That's really cool. None of my books will be a video game, but I like that idea. But one thing I actually have been playing with lately is, actual play, not a screenplay, not a movie, but actually being performed as a theater play. Because I still think that's an art form that I have so much respect for.
I can see that. I can see a lot of your addiction books being really good plays.
Yeah.
A.L. Mango says, audio is the future for indies indeed. Tales by Bob says, hello,
Hey,
Bob.
Hey, Bob.
I make most of my royalties on my audio despite the split. All right. Well, we'll discuss this. We'll discuss this more on the other side. But now it's time for the Indie Connection and One Dark Window. So get ready for that, and we'll be back right after that.
Hey guys, C.L. Cannon here from Fiction Atlas Press, bringing you another Indie Connection. And today I'd like to tell you about some indie books that you might enjoy if you're a fan of One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. The first book I have for you is called The Quill and the Vial by Bree Moore. Plants lie, and JC can hear them. For 7 years, a deadly plague has threatened the realm. JC has survived by using her plant magic to make and sell remedies, but most of her funds are sucked dry by a corrupt debt collector and the impossible debt she owes the realm. When the debt collector threatens JC with prison unless she'll marry him, she flees into the woods. There she runs into a nameless baron who agrees to pay her debt if she'll help him find the last of the prophecy of the Plague King. Together they'll face warrior monks, carnivorous reindeers, and their own dark pasts as they journey to find a cure before the Plague King rises to wipe out the realm. She failed the world once. Can she prevent it from happening again? The second book I have for you is called The Blood That Binds Us. She is the wielder of blood magic, and she may end them all. Monster. Ren has never stolen a life, but that doesn't stop her from believing her darkness makes her a walking nightmare. Harboring a power so lethal, unpredictable, and entirely forbidden by kingdom law, Ren spent her whole life hiding what she is, who she is. A blood witch. Meanwhile, a war is looming, and Ren's feral magic may be the only thing that can stop the uprising from destroying the kingdom, her home, and everyone that stands in their way. After her sister is captured by the rebellion, Ren must seek help from the kingdom's ruler, who would sooner imprison her than offer aid. Except Singard needs her, and when she volunteers the use of her powers in exchange for his helping find her sister, an unlikely alliance is born. Forced into a reluctant compromise with the white-haired witch, Sin finds himself protecting Ren for his kingdom's survival. But their star-crossed relationship quickly spirals into one straddling the precipice of hate and passion. As secrets are unveiled and loyalties are tested, neither are sure who they can trust. When hostilities deepen and war draws near, Ren is determined to rein in her wild magic and bind it to her will. With the lives of everyone she loves at stake, Ren must look within and decide if she is the monster she fears, or if there is light to be found in the darkest part. The third book I have for you is called Casters and Crowns by Elizabeth Lowham. Cursed by magic, bound by mistakes, Princess hinges on the mysterious Baron Reeves. Will love be enough to break the curse, or will war bring her kingdom to ruin? When Princess Arya sees her kingdom on the brink of war with the magic-wielding casters, she takes it upon herself to speak with the Widow Morton, the most dangerous. If successful, Arya will not only ensure peace, but also prove to her father that she is a worthy heir. But when her negotiations fail, Arya is dealt a terrible curse. Over the course of 100 days, she will be unable to sleep, her body and mind doomed to waste away. And then the curse will pass to her sister, until every member of the king's line is dead. Arya's best hope for breaking her curse is to seek help from another caster, the handsome and charming Baron Reeves. He may be entitled to a place as a magic user. Can he truly be trusted? She vows not to be fooled by his dimpled smiles or his devotion to his brothers. But as she spends more time with him, she discovers that her heart has other ideas. Baron has no desire to see the princess suffer, changing the king's opinion on casters, but he has secrets to protect and ghosts of his own. The last person he tried to save using his magic died, and he's not willing to risk harming someone he loves again. As the curse continues its deadly countdown, both Arya starts to save each other and unite a kingdom. And the last book I have for you is called A Crown of Star and Ash by Victoria K. Taylor. When the kingdom of Prayton began overthrowing the surrounding kingdoms of Krieger, no one knew why. As a healer for Prayton, Dea believed that there was no higher honor in the realm, but when Dea is imprisoned after learning an enormous theme, her love and loyalty for her kingdom is shattered. Beaten and tortured, a new, terrible power is unleashed inside of her, a power that she cannot control. Forced outside of the only kingdom that Dea has no choice but to team up with a band of unlikely rebels that all have one thing in common: the desire for the destruction of Prayton. One of these rebels is Callum, a male who spent most of his life in having lost everything to Prayton. Callum hates everything and everyone from the kingdom, including Dea. But Callum has a secret, one that could turn the tide of the war, and one that keeps him pushing everyone and everything away. As Dea struggles to recover from the trauma of her imprisonment, she is forced to face where her allegiances lie: with the kingdom that betrayed her, or with a male who could destroy it forever. Okay, that's all for me this week. I'll see you next week on the Indie Connection. Bye!
We were a little out of sync there, everybody. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. But nonetheless, the Indie Connection's awesome as always, and we really appreciate that from CL Cannon. And we'll try to figure out those audio glitches for next time. Sorry about that. But yeah, great books. Go check them out for sure. All right. So as far as multi-genre writing goes, is there? I think we all agree that it's just the norm now. It's just so what? I write different genres. I blend genres. Again, I think the voice is what's the most important aspect of things. But is there something that multi genres have given you that is it? Are you? Do you feel like you're more layered as an author? Do you feel like I think if you're someone who's hesitant to not try a different genre, uh, what do you think multi-genre writing gives you that maybe you didn't expect it to, or that you have, now because you are writing in different genres? Do you feel like there's something that you've you become more well-rounded? I don't know. Is there something that you feel like it has given you?
It does give you a broader perspective and makes you look at characters differently and different people's lifestyles differently. Again, everything for me is driven by character, and for many of my clients as well. I have many clients who use multiple pen names and have multiple genres, so I'm very used to editing different things. And one of the things I saw with one of my clients that I've also seen in myself is a broadening of topics and subjects that cannot be breached or and approached in certain genres. There are certain things that I discuss in my romance, things like infertility, things like adoption, things like abandonment, weight issues, a lot of things that go into a romance and how you see yourself as lovable and what you can give a partner. Those sort of things cannot be put into Stakeout. And in the same way, Angelica Cross from Stakeout cannot go and switch places with Sasha Santini from The Family Firm. Sasha would die in 5 minutes, and Angelica would be bored and kill everyone else in 5 minutes. It's so the more genres that you write, even if you don't publish them, the more genres that you write and at least try and expand your skills, if it's just as a writing exercise, once you go back to the genres you do write and you do want to publish, it will make you a more well-rounded writer, and it will make you see, like I said, a lot of different perspectives and a lot of different things very differently than you would see them just by reading and writing in one genre. So again, you don't have to publish it, but if you're ever looking for something to expand upon yourself and to give yourself an exercise as a writer, just try writing another genre, because one of the things we get in romance is it's so easy. I could write that and make money. Go right ahead, give it a shot.
I agree with Lily in that it makes you more well-rounded. I have always been a multi-genre writer. I never really thought in one idea or one frame of mind anyway. The characters always came to me in different forms and different realities. So, but I used to write in different things. So I used to write poetry, which I don't write poetry anymore. But in some of the books, there is poetic writing in them, and you write in thematic ideas of this will make a great film, and the way you tell that story becomes part of that thought process. Is that you, like you said, I think Juliet said that she sees her books as film when she writes them. So you kind of like I hear a lot of my authors say the same thing. Oh, this will make a great film. I seen this as I write as I would write a movie. And it's like, okay, but there's a very difference between writing screenplays, which I have written. I don't like writing screenplays because they're too formulated. But in writing these different forms and in writing in different genres, it makes you so more well-rounded, and you can incorporate some of those things into your other writing. Like I said, there's some poetic elements in some of my stories that come from my idea of writing poetry. And although I don't write poetry anymore, I haven't in years, I still have that background. I don't write news stories anymore, but I studied newspaper writing. I studied journalism. And therefore, I use some of those ideas in creating my story and trying to get the succinctness of a news story. So if I want to tell a part of this story, it'll be written as if you were reading the newspaper, because it gets you right into it and it gets you right through it, and it hits you harder that way than if I rode around in Florida writing and all this kind of stuff. You kind of like lose that immediacy of the story. So these type of writing and these type of ideas and things only makes you a better writer, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. Multiple genres allow me to explore different aspects of what interests me and different perspectives as well. It's like with the Camelot Immortal series, I explored the female aspect of the Arthurian legends that tends to get kind of overlooked in the stories. And like with the historical fantasy in my Venice books, I'm exploring religion in that world as well. So it's something like the good aspects and the bad aspects of how religion was tied to that society so much. And and with the fantasy stuff, you can get to explore immortality and exactly what does that mean and how much of an impact does that have on a character. And like the entire nautical saga of the Outer Islands came about from the idea is like, what if the gods were actually nice people and not dicks, like you see in most fantasy books? So that's kind of the idea that started that series. Is like I wanted to write a god that was helpful, a fantasy god that was helpful. So it allows me, and with the horror stuff, I can really go dark on human psychology. Is like what makes the darkness tick. So there's different aspects in multiple genres that I like to explore.
Yeah, I think for me, it just takes out the kind of pressure of expectation, of other people's expectation. I'm writing for my soul or for my passion, and not what I think the genre should be or what I think other people have an expectation for, which is why often when I start writing a story that I think is going to go a certain way, it changes. And that's because I'm allowing the story to tell itself instead of me trying to fit it into a box that other people are expecting.
Nice. Sean says, I think especially among indie and self-pub writers, the ability to write multi-genres provides a wide range of audience, especially among multi-writer readers. Tales by Bob says, agreed, Sean. The more genres I have on the table, the more readers I can reach. And then Sean says, Bob, when do we get redneck meth is wizards in space? And then Bob said, Bob, I don't think Bob's answered that question yet. But Bob says, I did a lot of freelance writing, which led me to writing a bunch of weird stuff I had never written otherwise, like redneck was meth wizards, and made me a better writer for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think ultimately that is the yeah. I got it, Sean.
They touched on something that's very, very important, because when I say I do things for marketing and for sales, all of that boils down to one thing. It's to reach readers. I want people to read my books. I'm not just putting this out there for, self-pleasure. That's not it. If I want self-pleasure, I will go do something else. I'm putting these books out there for readers because I am first and foremost a reader. And what I wanted to do ever since I was a child was make people enjoy books the same way I enjoyed other people's. So when I sit there and I talk about marketing and tropes and all of that, all of it boils down to reaching more readers. And yes, the more genres you write in, the more readers you can reach. And it's an amazing thing when you see, numbers tick up on your sales dashboards. And it's like, it's not about the money that comes in. It's about, that's one person, that one sale that happens, whether it's one or it's 100. That's 1 or 100 people that I am going to make happy, or I'm going to make cry and curse at me, depending on the book. But it's such an amazing feeling, and that's an amazing feeling for when you're done writing. Sometimes some people say they have like a come down from when they're done writing. No, I get more excited when it comes to the marketing because I can reach more people and reach more people through these genres.
Yeah, and I don't think we need to dumb down the readers. Like I had an experience yesterday where I had a girl come to my table and she said, I bought some books from you last year, and she bought one that was creature feature, one that was time travel, and then she bought my contemporary books. And what she said is, I like your voice. And I think as writers, we need to understand that readers are bright. And if they like our voice, they'll find our voice in multi-genres. They'll say, oh, I like that. Let me try this and see if I like it too. So, and I love what you're saying about marketing too, because we are having to market. We are having to find readers. And I think just staying consistent with our voice, no matter what we write, we'll find those readers because they're going to love what we did and they're going to come to us.
Right. At the core of a lot of my books, I have a ton of crossover readers. That's why I don't have the S.L. Sinclair as a secret anymore. Like I said, initially it was just so people didn't demonize me.
Right.
But I do have a lot of crossover readers for my voice. And that's very important, is to maintain your voice and maintain your characters' voices. But it's just easier to have these things separated down. But I will sell. When I did a signing, I put 2 pen names up and I sold 2 different genres and people bought both. And it's really cool.
when I do signings, I put all my books up and I let people know this side of the table is very dark and
Me too.
like that kind of stuff. Yeah, you want to be on this side. And if you're younger, you might want to be on this side of the table.
Yep.
And a book is not done until it's been read. That's my personal feeling. You're not done with your book until people have read it. And that's why we're in this life. That's why we're writers. That's why we're authors. We're here for readers. We want people to read it. We want people to enjoy us and like us, but we also want people not to like us when we want them to, our characters to be the mean, evil, stepmother and all that kind of stuff. We want people to say, "Oh, I hated that person. Oh, I hated that character," and that say, "Yes, you were supposed to hate that character." So it's that's the gratification that I get, at least when someone comes up to me and says, "Oh, I read that, and oh, I hated that person, and why didn't you kill her, or why did you kill him?" It's like, well, because he's going to suffer in the next life, or maybe the next book. So,
Awesome.
yeah,
Awesome. Well, part of the reason I am here today is to torture all of you with an epilogue quiz, and you're going to learn a little bit about me. The quiz is going to be about me today, but we'll tackle that in just a second. I wanted to. It's rare that I have all the people here, whether they're in the chat or sitting right in front of me, who are going to be involved with this week's programming on Go Indie Now, because on Monday, the long-awaited debut of Page Numbers will happen with Bob Magoo, where Bob explores the numbers behind what we do and how we do them, and gives new meaning to transparency. And it's a wonderful show. I'm on the verge of finishing it. I will finish it as soon as we get off air here, and it will go up on Monday night. 8 p.m. will be the premiere date, premiere night, premiere time. So 8 p.m. Eastern. We'll premiere it on Monday, and then Tuesday, our own Julia Rose continues her series on First Time for Everything. Season 2, she's going to have the awesome Canadian author Mark Watson with her. If you've never met Mark is a treat, and that'll be a really good show. And then our own AF Stewart brings a brand new show to our network, as well as we're going to trope or not to trope. That is the question, as AF Stewart will bring on an author, and they'll talk about a specific trope, and the author has a choice of whether to defend the trope or to say, no, that trope sucks. And Anita will take the opposite opinion, and they'll have a nice little conversation. And this particular series premieres with AJ Mulliken, and they're going to talk about Insta Love, or Love at First Sight, right? Same thing, right? Kind of idea. And then on Saturday, I have another spotlight where I'm going to spotlight some indie filmmakers, female indie filmmakers. So I'm real excited about that. All right. So we'll going to be fun. Yay. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Okay. So you're all going to learn a little bit about me. I have multiple choice questions. I'm going to keep track of who gets them right and gets them wrong. And the winner gets to say the magic words at the end of the show. And don't worry, if you don't know the magic words, it's always time to go indie now is the magic words. So you'll get to say that and end our show for us if you do win today's quiz. All right. So the first question I have for you about Joe Compton is, I was once touted as A world-class gymnast, B, a classical guitar player, C, a tennis prodigy, or D, a world-renowned Shakespeare actor.
I would say B.
I would say guitarist, whichever one.
Yeah, B, guitarist, yeah.
That's what I was going to say, just guitar.
Yeah, B.
Everybody, Anita?
Oh, yeah, I'll go B.
You're all wrong. I was actually a tennis prodigy, in which time I actually defeated Andy Roddick at one point in his career as a tennis prodigy when I was 6 years old. And I hated it. It was a horrible it's a Nazi regime that I will never get behind, and so I hated every moment of it, but I was really good at it. So I was a tennis prodigy at one point in my life. All right, my next question is: my favorite movie of all time is A, Fast and the Furious, B, Big Trouble in Little China, C, Henry V, or D, Goodfellas.
I'm gonna say B.
I'm going to say Goodfellas.
Okay.
I feel like I should know this. I'm going to say Goodfellas too.
Okay, Anita?
I'm going to go with B, Big Trouble in Little China.
Again, it's C, Henry V, the Kenneth Branagh version.
We don't know you at all.
You don't know me at all. Yeah, Kenneth Branagh's Henry V is my favorite film of all time.
Wait, what happened if we don't get any of these right?
I was just saying that you just have to.
Then I just say the magic words, and you can all go away. All right. So now my favorite. So I have attended Slam Dance 8 years in a row. My all-time favorite, the highest ranking Slam Dance film I have on my letterbox is A, The Penny Black, B, The Vast of Night, C, Straw Dogs, or D, Rock Steady Row.
I'm going to say Straw Dog because I heard of that one.
Yeah, C.
Okay.
I'm going with A.
I don't know any of them, so I'm going to say Rock Steady Row.
Okay. We have somebody on the board. Somebody got that right, and that was Anita. A, The Penny Black is the highest ranked.
So I still remember something in your videos.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. This one should be pretty easy. For anybody who's met me in person, this should be pretty easy. I just gave it away, so you're all going to get the answer now. But all right. The thing I want to change most about myself is A, my height, B, my singing voice, C, going gray slower, or D, not a fucking thing.
I say D.
D.
Actually, it's A, my height. I would love to be 6'8".
How can you change your height?
All right. Okay. Now, the first book I ever read cover to cover, was A, Charlotte's Web, B, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, C, Dune, or D, Interview with a Vampire.
I'm going to say Charlotte's Web.
I'm going to say Dune.
I was going to say Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe.
Dune.
Okay. Well, you're going to say Lion. So, okay. We do have another person on the board, and that's Lily. My first book I ever read cover to cover was Charlotte's Web.
You said that once on This Week in Indies a while back.
Dune was the first book I've ever bought with my own money.
Okay.
I did not finish it, though, because I was 10 years old at the time.
Okay.
And I did not understand a fucking word of it when I was 10 years old. So I did not finish it the first time I ever read it. But Charlotte's Web, that was a pretty easy read to get cover to cover through. So, okay. So now, within 2, I want you all to give me a number. This is the bonus question. This is going to determine who wins between Lily and Anita. But, I will say this. Okay, I'm going to give 2 points for the winner. So everybody can win. So the bonus question is, in how many countries have I worked on a film crew? So in how many countries do you think I've worked on a film crew with?
I'm going to say 4.
4 for Lily, okay.
Well, I was going to say 4 too.
I said 3.
3 for I heard 3 from Juliet. Is that right? Did you say 3, Juliet?
Yeah.
Okay, Anita?
3.
Well, Lily and James are the closest. I've actually worked in 6 different countries.
Wow.
So.
That's cool.
So Lily, you are our big winner today. You get to do the honors of
not to win.
But before we do all of that, I hope everybody learns something about me and remembers that for the next time.
I won't.
I have a memory of a goldfish if it's not for work. So
it's all good. All right, let's go around the room and tell everybody where they can find you. Though, Anita, start us off. Tell everybody where they can check you out.
Well, you can check me out at afstewart.ca. Everything's there, merch, books, everything. I'm also on all the retailers. And you can also find me as the host of the Shadows and Ink podcast over on Podbean and other podcast sites. And of course, here on Go Indie Now on Wednesday for Trope or Not to Trope, where I get to shred Insta love. So I'm happy.
Awesome. All right, James, tell everyone where they can find you, sir.
Well, foremost, you can find me at rockhillpublishing.com. That's my publishing company. You can find me and all of my other authors there. I have a website, jlhill.com. And of course, I'm all over the internet, Amazon, every place else you might think of.
Nice. All right, Juliet.
Yeah, you can find me at authorjulietrose.com. And then in person, I'll be at the Conyers, Georgia Book Fest on April 19th. So come see me there.
Awesome. Everybody go check that out. All right. And then finally, Lily, tell everybody where they can find you first, and then give us the magic words to take us out, please.
Okay, you can find me at lilyluchesi.com. You see my spelling of my name right there. That will take you to all of my social media, my newsletters, and you can also find me on Kickstarter. I am about to begin my second Kickstarter for a limited edition 10th anniversary of my novel Stakeout. So please feel free to look me up there as well. And you can find my more sweeter romance as Samantha Calcott. Or if you like things dark and a little forbidden, you can find S.L. Sinclair. And also, if you are an author, if you are interested in becoming an author, you can always find me at payhip.com/partners in crime book services for my editing work. And I would like to thank Joe for having all of us again for a great conversation. And remember, it's always time to go indie now.